Welcome to Truman's Town Hall with your host, Matt Truman.
Hello. My name is Matthew Doc Truman. Thank you for joining us for Truman's Town Hall. Today we have a special broadcast. We're going to bring in candidate running for Republican governor of Ohio. His name is Casey Putsch. And we also have his running mate along with us, Kim Georgeton. Welcome, guys. Thanks for coming on tonight.
Of course. Thank you.
So I guess we'll start out a little bit with give us a little background about yourselves, family, things like that.
Of course. How about ladies first tonight, Kim?
Oh, you're so kind. Thank you. I'm Kim Georgeton. I am from the greater Cincinnati area, was born and raised on what we call the West Side. There is always a battle between the West Side and the East Side, if you don't know that about Cincinnati. Graduated from Oak Hills High School in 1990, the Highlanders. And then I attended UC for college. So go Bearcats. And just kind of have been and worked in Ohio for the majority of my career. I have a background in business transformation, digital infrastructure, and operations. And I'm just, excited to be included on this campaign with Casey to help him bring to life the policy and basically bringing Ohio back onto solid ground.
Excellent. Mr. Putsch?
Yeah, thank you. Well, I largely just grew up in Tiffin, Ohio. The family business there was Seneca Hills Golf Course, which was a small town golf course, and the whole family came together for that. So we all had to take responsibility for ourselves, and working from 6 o'clock in the morning and 10 o'clock at night, 7 days a week through the year. It was a lot of hard work, but going beyond that, in the family back, a lot of proud military men, World War II, Vietnam, both world wars with other generations, even all the way back to the cavalry. So long story short, just a lot of solid Americans that care about their family and their community and making the future better. Went to Ohio State University. I graduated in 2005, actually, and basically centered in fine arts through industrial design, and worked with all engineering students there, and worked up my own way in business and building race cars and restorations and such. That later led to me creating the Genius Graduate Educational Programs I've done for 11 years, mentoring the best and brightest young engineering students and helping them get awesome jobs everywhere from Lockheed Martin and Tesla to Fiat Chrysler and Marathon. Also built the Omega car, that high efficiency diesel sports car you may have seen me get to speak about on Tucker Carlson's show earlier last year. And even building a little watch company here, working on that too. But just saw a lot of things that I frankly, wasn't pleased with this year. And I felt that Ohio needed another option. So really honored to have Kim on the ticket with me. She brings an incredible balance. And thanks for having us here right now.
All right. Thanks. So what was the factor that you said, hey, I'm going to run for governor in Ohio? Because I'm sure there's folks out there that were like, man, we need some more candidates. We need a primary.
Well, you're right. There are. So in short answer is my soul was burning. I would say, especially in the last 5 or 6 years, throughout the Biden years, I just saw so many things happening in our society, both economically, socially, even industrially, that just didn't sit well with me. Throughout my whole life, you try and you work to build businesses, educational programs, build a family, be able to afford a home and have a job. And I just seeing things being torn down. And I'll be perfectly honest. I am not a fan of Vivek Ramaswamy. I think his interests are for himself and more globalist. I don't think it's in the best interest of Ohio. And that I couldn't ignore it. That's what I said. My soul was burning. I had been thinking about running for Congress a few years back, actually, against Marcy Kaptur. Didn't quite come to fruition, just giving a lot of consideration toward it. And just over the things that I saw that I was displeased with, it comes down, I think we all get the government we deserve. And to me, Ohio deserves a lot better. So put the action in, put together a great team. And here we are mounting a charge.
All right. So what you have to run with the lieutenant governor. So what gave you the idea to choose Miss Georgeton?
Well, she's a fantastic person that is exemplified drive and great values, good conservative values over the time. I appreciate her mindset relating to the COVID lockdowns and things that relate to health matters that, frankly, are important to me, that are reflected in her own initiatives and drive. And beyond that, just seeing who she is in terms of being just a fine Christian woman with a great family. I knew that this is a person with her personality, with her drive, her work ethic, and values would be a great balance to the ticket. So for me, those were the qualities first and foremost to choose over anything else. And having her now on the ticket and making that public, I'm seeing that reaction. Well, that reflected also in the reaction of the people that are excited to have her on the ticket together. And going back to your point, people have been frankly praying for another option than what we've been given on the Republican ticket. And they're so excited by what we're representing and moving forward with.
Miss George, I actually saw you speak in Brookville. You were running. Neil Peterson was running as an independent candidate. He had that big at his church. He had that big event with the resistance chicks and all that. And I when I saw you running with Mr. Putsch, I thought, there we go. I like that. So, what do you guys? I see America First. You're America First candidates. What's that mean to both of you? America First.
Kim, would you like to take that start?
Well, yeah, sure. I'll kick it off. I think for America First, it's more than just America. Right now, we're talking about Ohio specifically, and we're facing a very big crossroads here in Ohio. And I think everybody would agree. We're seeing lots of corruption, lots of fraud that's being exposed that is making everyone question what's going on in Ohio. We've seen our Ohio budget increase from approximately $50 billion about 10 years ago to about $100 billion to today. And with a 100% increase in the Ohio budget, I don't think our Ohio citizens are feeling like their wages have increased by 100%. We're also seeing property taxes increase by nearly 50%. And again, the welfare of the people is not increasing at that rate. So where is the money going? What is that gap involving? And we're seeing with the Somalian situation, we're seeing just silence from Columbus, and the silence really speaks loudly. It's very scary that we're actually being discouraged to ask questions about it. I know that there are a lot of people trying to cover that particular situation, and it's just wrong. We're seeing our money going to things that we didn't approve of, and they're going to potentially, allegedly illegal matters that are involving misuse and abuse of our money, of our taxpayer money. And so Ohio is at a real crossroads with just the sheer corruption and fraud of where our money is actually going. So when I think about America First, I really have to tie it to Ohio because we're all Ohioans. We care about where our money is going, and we want to know where it's going, and we deserve to know. So we're running for transparency on making sure that we're rolling back all of those budgets, and we're understanding what's going on with it. I know a large portion of that budget increase is involving Medicare, Medicaid. So I think we know we have a lot of places where we know we can look. And once we find where the damage is happening, we're going to put a stop to it. So for me, that's Ohio First as it relates as a subunit under America First. But we need to really focus on that first and foremost, I think, before we can even uncover some of the rest of the items. So Casey, feel free to jump on and add to that.
Thank you. Well, Ohio home, America first, I say. And that's simply put that we need to take care of ourselves and our people. So already, just by virtue of what you heard from Kim, I think you're all seeing why I'm so happy to have her on and the great balance there and what she brings to the table. But more so than that, there's some other things to think of. Data centers that are coming in that seem to be slipped under the cover of night, which seem to be a net loss to the state of Ohio and its people with massive tax abatements. With nothing coming in that way. huge electricity bill rising to where we're basically subsidizing the cost of their power, issues with them using the fresh water for cooling and creating very few jobs, really being a net loss. There's also concern with things like H-1Bs and company being able to use foreign labor and displacing our young people and the jobs that they can have, and then destroying the job market by being able to pay them less. So some things like this that start happening. But when I think of Ohio Home and America, and specifically Ohioans first, I'm doing this specifically because I care about the people first and foremost, because it's the people that make a state. Without the people, there is no state beyond just our wonderful land. We are our best resource. But saying Ohio Home and America first is simply not selling out to foreign interests, not selling out our people and working on specifically them first. Because just looking at it as a human being, as anybody else does here, as Kim does with her family, as you do, when we think of our children and our neighbors, are our kids going to be able to afford a home in the future? Are we letting corporations come in and buy homes and then destroy the market to where it's too expensive? Across the board, it's looking at what we can do to bring jobs back, bring industry back. How do we make it so that if there's data centers coming in, it's a net gain for everybody? How do we have power and investing in that so it's less expensive? And then how do we, and this is something that's very, very important to me, allow our Ohioans to actually create new industry, to foster building innovation, perhaps startup company areas in industry so that can be done again. I don't like that this is the state that's known for the Wright brothers,
Yeah.
Orville and Wilbur, who were bicycle mechanics that found the ingenuity to develop their own wind tunnel, test their own airfoils, and effectively master powered flight early on. What are we doing to facilitate anything like that in the future? So, with regard to our policies and initiatives, it's specifically caring about our people here first and make sure that everything we do is ensuring that they can build a community, they can build a family, they'll be able to afford a home, we can build industries which create jobs and believe in a tomorrow once again.
So I'm seeing a lot of things on X and different places. Some folks are comparing you to the other candidate down in Florida who's running governor or the candidate James Fishback. And
Yes.
yesterday he just proposed a 50% sin tax on things like OnlyFans. Any ideas or any thoughts on that?
Well, I can admire anything that tries to keep society on track. There are things like that that I see being something of a trap for our young people, and getting them to be good, connected, productive members of society. Obviously, we live in a free country, but you want people to have the opportunity to live a worthwhile, wholesome life and build a nice community and family. So James and his choices with regard to that, if he feels that's in the best interest of his people and their future in Florida, I would applaud that effort. But specifically to talk about that, I haven't quite thought about that yet because we're worrying about multi-billion-dollar fraud to take care of, things like the Somali
Sure.
daycare, which darn near could offset the entire cost of our schools for a year, depending on what it is. But I applaud any effort that allows our young people to best have a good future and build a family.
Yeah, that's something I saw and I wanted to bring it up. H-1B visa workers, you mentioned that earlier, and I've seen videos where Vivek Ramaswamy has not denounced that. That to me, as an Ohioan, as a Republican, that seems like an issue that we need to tackle real quick, real fast.
Yes.
What are your guys' thoughts on that?
Yeah. If you don't mind, I'd love to
Go
respond
for
to
it.
that first.
You're welcome to do it.
Yeah. So, I have a personal story regarding the H-1B situation. So I formerly worked for a company that was acquired by a large Indian firm, and they acquired our company in 2020. And through that process, they rolled out new forms that we had to sign as employees. And one of the forms was a health and safety form. So I'm looking at it and I'm reading it and I'm wondering to myself, this is interesting because it's requiring me to report on the health of all of the individuals on my team. And I thought that's quite strange because in the United States, we have HIPAA laws that protect people from sharing their health information. So it literally wanted me to report on, like, for example, Bob has cancer, Joe has a flu today, Sally has Parkinson's, and it wanted me to report that on a weekly basis. That report was then going to be rolled up to the corporate head of HR and be reviewed at the global corporate headquarters of the company that acquired mine, and the Indian company. And when I looked at the form, I told my HR person, I said, I'm not going to sign that form. And she goes, well, you have to, it's required. And I was like, well, I'm not going to sign it. So you can, let me go if you have to or whatever, but I'm not signing this. It violates our rights. And through some different exchanges back and forth, I found out that that company was being paid for receiving a signature from every single employee at that company on that form.
Oh.
And I said, okay. So on the form, there was the symbol, like the United Nations symbol with the little leaves that goes up like that around the United Nations.
Mm-hmm.
And what I learned was that our company was being paid by the United Nations, probably some kind of an NGO, right? Where they were getting funds likely from our US taxpayer dollars to basically fund a bottom line for that company so they could add it to their profitability. So I told the HR team, hey, find out how much it is, just, deduct it from my pay. The conversations continued forward, and they came back and said, you know what, it's fine. You don't have to sign the form. We're going to let it go for now. And I was like, all right. So I for sure thought that at that moment in time, I was going to be let go, but they did keep me on after that. And slowly but surely, they began to replace every single one of the American workers with an Indian worker. So that's how it ended. I was finally laid off in April of 2024. And we all know how the job market is in software consulting and technology. So that is what is happening with H-1B visas. We're being sold out through NGOs, and then our entire system, we are losing value for every single one of our workers in the state of Ohio, and it has to stop.
Yeah. The other thing I want to mention with regard to H-1Bs, it's somewhere around 70 to 72% are Indian. The large majority of the rest of them are Chinese. Vivek Ramaswamy, obviously his parents are from India, and he only got a citizenship here because he was born in America. So obviously the connection is obvious. The thing about H-1Bs are, and heck, you can even let Grok or AI calculate for you how much money certain companies save by hiring H-1Bs from India. They can pay them less money. So there's short-term games for big corporations and billionaires to doing it. And in the case of Ohio, if you're flooding the job market with people from India that you pay less, well, you do two things for all the people here. They're not going to be able to be paid as much because companies know they can pay people less. So you're going to hurt the job, the salaries negatively there, but also you're creating a lot of competition. And I'm going to tell you that's simply unfair to our people here. Now, here's the most diabolical part. I've heard high-level politicians, which obviously include our opponent, Vivek, say that we don't have smart enough people here. We don't have the people to fill the roles. Well,
Right.
I take that both, frankly, a bit personally as well as professionally, because for the last 11 years, I've mentored the best young engineering students that get incredible jobs. I know firsthand how bright all of them are. So when you hear a politician or somebody high level from a corporation or a billionaire saying we don't have high enough level people or smart enough people here, they are lying to you. And that's code for they want to save hundreds of millions of dollars by flooding the United States and Ohio with cheap labor from India. They don't care about you or the future. So while there things relating to H-1B are federal issues, we're simply going to be doing everything we possibly can to make sure that companies will be doing the right thing and hiring our young native people here so that Ohio has its best future for the people.
Amen. So I'm not going to stick on Vivek too much, but I got a couple more questions about that. I believe in innocent until proven guilty. I wholeheartedly believe in that. Vivek's bodyguard was arrested for drug trafficking, I believe it was. And there was also, I saw a story that there was a RICO case brought in Georgia with some tech oligarchs. Do you guys have any thoughts on like these stories coming out now and what it means for Ohio?
I've got a positive contrast story, if this means something, a little bit of fun.
Yeah.
So obviously, with politics at this level, you have to think of things like security, which do include bodyguards. And Kim's probably worried, like, goodness, Casey, what story are you going to tell? But I got a private message from a bodyguard, someone that obviously we trust very much, and he was joking around but half serious. He's like, "Dude, I'm willing to put my life on the line for you, and I'll even take a bullet for this campaign in Ohio. But if I do, I want first dibs to buy your motorcycle. I don't want a handout. I don't want it for free. Just a good deal." And I'm thinking, man, that is awesome. You know you're on the right team when your bodyguard is willing to take a bullet and just wants first dibs on your motorcycle. That's a man that will put his life on the line for Ohio. And I think that goes to show what our entire team is. So, in contrast to what you mentioned with regard to our opponent and their bodyguard, I can't comment. I don't know. It's certainly, at the very least, a very challenging thing for their world right now. And those are challenges that we certainly don't want to see with somebody who could hypothetically be in office. So at the very least, we've got people on our side that are willing to put their life on the line just for Ohio.
Yeah. One thing I saw, this is the last Vivek question, I promise. I watched the TPSU speech that Vivek gave, and he talked about heritage Americans. And I try not to make this podcast about me, but I am one of those heritage Americans. I felt offended by that. I don't know if you guys felt offended by that at all, if you saw it, but what are your thoughts on heritage Americans in Ohio?
May I lead on this one, Kim? And
Yeah,
then
go for it.
Love your take.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think you can see now from my scene behind me is a folded flag above an M1 Garand and some medals.
I see that.
Yeah, that was my grandfather. You know, he landed on the beach in Okinawa, Easter Sunday, 1945, as an Army private. He sent my grandmother, his high school sweetheart at the time, flowers because he didn't think he'd live to see tomorrow. He got out. He saved a lot of men. He volunteered to bring people through fire and bring water and move wounded. Got a Bronze Star. His younger brother flew F-4 Phantoms in Vietnam, nuclear B-52s over the polar ice cap during Cold War, and flew for the Ohio Air National Guard. And one of his airplanes is in the National Museum of the Air Force down at Wright Pat. Their dad was in both World Wars. When my granddad was a little kid, they grew up in Honolulu, Hawaii before World War II as kids, obviously Pearl Harbor. And that daddy before that was in the Calvary, and we still have the bugle that he blew. Now, wars don't make you great, but they do mark a milestone of fighting for your country, for your fellow countrymen, your hopes and dreams of the future, and your children. And my parents and my father worked himself nearly to death for the community, the little golf course in Tiffin, Ohio. And we had tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, like God knows how many people I was exposed to. And this is our culture. These are generations and generations of going back of blood and sweat and soil. And there is so much more to an American, all of us, than just a piece of paper. So if anybody's trying to tell you that America is just an idea and it's just a piece of paper, well, one, they're lying to you or they simply don't know. But at the very least, they're insulting all of us to our very core.
Yeah. Miss Georgeton, did you watch that speech at all? Or do you have any comments on heritage Americans? Or?
You know, I didn't see the speech, but I've seen all of the comments about it. And, you know, Ohio used to have a slogan. It was called Ohio, the heart of it all, right? To me, there are some things that just hurt your heart when you hear them. My father was actually a World War II Marine veteran. He was in the 2nd Marine Division. Believe it or not, I'm the youngest of 7. So therefore, you know, he's passed away. But it was amazing to hear his stories growing up. after his experience in World War II and the pride that that generation had and the strength that that generation had, and the generation before them as well that fought in World War I, my grandfather. So, and my brother was in the Army in the Korean War. So, I think that that it's a definite miss, that there's something that is not being expressed when a comment like that is made that hurts your heart.
Right.
I have to tell a fun little story, if I may, Kim. We spoke about this at the dinner after our first rally event. So my grandfather landed on Okinawa Army in 45 Easter Sunday, and Kim, your father, you were the youngest, so it was your father, but he was a Marine and landed the same day in Okinawa.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, here's how the story goes. It's interesting. My grandfather goes south, and in the Army, and the Marines went north. And a little bit later, the Marines got a call. They're like, "Hey, Army needs help. We need to go down." And of course, typical Marines like, "Oh, we got to bail out Army. Come on, guys." They go down there and go, "Oh God, they're getting lit up. This is bad news." And I thought about it with Kim, and I go, "Kim, is this our family members from the past saving us in the same kind of thing?" Casey goes in to run for governor is like the Army private going south, and then Kim, her DNA looking from above at the Marines, is like, "Oh, I got to go help this guy. He's getting lit up." And then together, the story went well. So I just thought that was a fun parallel.
Yep.
Awesome.
Very tactical. Very tactical.
So a couple of the hot button issues here in Ohio. We saw I think everybody now has seen the Nick Shirley videos up in Minneapolis and Minnesota. And then there's some other private journalists going around in Columbus. Fraud, waste, and abuse, and how that impacts government subsidies. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's heartbreaking. And a tongue-in-cheek, but a serious thing. You gotta like YouTubers sometimes. YouTubers come in to save the day. It's fine being a car YouTuber, of course. But no, that's tremendous. Initially, and Kim, forgive me if I'm wrong here, but initially I was hearing estimates relating to Minneapolis and Minnesota at about 9 billion, but now it sounds like it's pushing 20. Is that right, Kim?
That's what I've heard. Yeah.
That's astonishing. I mean, that's more than we spend on schools in a year in Ohio. And you think, to where did it get wasted to? Where did it go? What level of, shall we say, cancer is within our government society to let that happen? So, just in short, it's horrific. Columbus and Ohio, I think, is just slightly second to Minneapolis in terms of population. So the same sorts of things are likely going to be seen here. The amount could very easily parallel that. It's yet to be seen, but you have to look at whose watch was that under, what connections. So that's something that I'm looking at objectively, that I can't wait to get in there and simply attack it. Kim, your thoughts?
I would just echo what you had to say about it. It's kind of terrifying to wonder how much is actually at stake with all of this, and how much of our money is actually going through this process. So, yeah, I'm very interested in peeling back the onion there and understanding how much is actually at stake and how much we can actually save Ohioans.
All right. I think the biggest topic that's going around social media and what folks are talking about right now is property tax. Obviously, the governor can't just eliminate property tax, but what are some thoughts that you guys have on property tax and eliminating that with the Citizens Initiative?
Well, certainly, I think I'm gonna let Kim attack some of this too, but the biggest thing in doing that is it's putting power back in the hands of the people in a couple of ways. One, if you work your entire life to own your own home, but you still pay taxes on it, and perhaps hyperinflated markets and things like this with our seniors that are on a fixed income, and you risk having to lose your house, but you own it. Do you really own it? That's just ridiculous at face value there. And of course, the thing about putting power back to the people, if by virtue of you doing that, then any new taxes or expenditures to fund things like schools and such, what it's going to do is it's going to force accountability, and it's going to force fiscal responsibility with the government to the places where that money would have gone. And then also it'll have to come up on a ballot to be voted for. So these are just ways to put power back in the hands of the people, of course, managing it to functionally work and taking it away from the government. Kim, would you like to jump in there as well?
Sure. I mean, just kind of pointing out that the Ohio Supreme Court in 1997 had said that the primary funding source for public education violates the Ohio Constitution. I've got my fabulous Ohio Constitution book right here.
Wow.
That was 1997, and nearly 30 years later, Ohio continues to defy that ruling. So by Constitution, and I am a constitutional conservative, I believe that we need to ensure property taxes are coming from the correct source, and that should be from the state level. And as we've just talked about, there's probably a lot that we can save when we uncover where all the other money is going, whereby we shouldn't have to replace it dollar for dollar. So I think the first step is when we get in there, again, identifying where all of the fraud is so that we can actually save Ohioans money and perhaps tighten the belt in other areas so that we really don't need to ask for any more once property taxes are abolished.
Good deal. So as governor, how would you handle things like, and this is a lot to throw at you at once, but things like education, healthcare, infrastructure, and public safety?
With regard to in conjunction with the taxes or in general?
Say again. I'm sorry.
Well, are we speaking of with regard to is the fact with regard to property taxes, or are you speaking more in general?
Going away from property taxes. So I mean, we could talk about
that answers the question well. I just wanted to be certain on that.
Certainly.
The first thing with education, we've got K through 12 and we've got higher education colleges and such. I'd like to hit on both those topics here briefly. In my work with Genius Garage the last 11 years, and picking up the slack where the American educational system leaves off, largely what it is are the practical skills. It's the experience that young people need to get a job where, unfortunately, colleges and universities, largely academic vacuums where you don't get experience well. So I've seen how the sausage is made and I've seen a lot of difficulties there. But really what bothers me so greatly is the fact that young people, perhaps at 17 years of age, can effectively get a $100,000 loan to go into a college or university and potentially for a major of which there are no jobs. And then that loan cannot be defaulted on. So I want to scrutinize universities and colleges. And the other component of that is ones that may be sitting on multi-billion-dollar endowments, where if invested, the money that it would accrue a year just from the investments, hypothetically, could pay for many scholarships. So I bring those two items up because we need to look at our higher education and is it really working in the best interest of young people and for their future to get them in the workforce, to becoming productive members of society without just being a black hole for a nation's future wealth and families and putting them in debt now. With regard to K through 12, the biggest thing is, and our opponent, I think, has completely the wrong look at it. He's wanting to put all the pressure on teachers, making teachers accountable for the tests and, well, virtually everything, the performance of the students. That's not fair and that's not reasonable. If you put all the pressure on the teachers, all the good ones are going to leave, which is a similar kind of thing we saw with law enforcement officers in the Biden administration. People weren't going to bat for them. They weren't looking after our law enforcement officers. And frankly, the good cops were leaving. I want to make sure that we look after our teachers because after all, they are our best resource there. But with regard to the school system and of course, within government, I believe that the lowering of the test standards and for students has to be looked at from the governmental level from the top down. So look after our students, or teachers, treat them well, but take care of it from the government and down, and realize that you cannot solve every problem just by throwing cubic yards of money at it. You have to understand it from the inside out, and you have to look at our best resources, which of course are our teachers, and we have to be giving education to be a completely transparent curriculum so that no strange things can be hidden, no radical ideologies, so that our young people can simply efficiently learn, grow, and be great members of society in Ohio.
Excellent. Uh, Public safety. What kind of thoughts have you had in regard to public safety around Ohio with crime and the like?
Certainly. There's twofold large things here. One I'd like to hint on as well. Obviously, we're seeing a lot with illegal immigration and ICE. That's something of great concern to me. I do have to point out that an illegal immigrant, the first word is illegal. They are, in fact, doing a criminal act. So, the simple fact of the matter is the best way to protect the future of our Ohioans in the future is to fully cooperate with the Trump administration and ICE and to efficiently facilitate doing that. By cooperating, that may be done in the best, most efficient, and humane manner possible. And we have to be mindful of leftist activists, um, even those that are embedded in our system that may make that more difficult. So simply, we need to cooperate with the Trump administration, with ICE. That's going to be a huge gain for Ohio. Beyond that, though, in terms of safety, we have to have the backs of our law enforcement officers. I've seen it firsthand, friends of mine in the past, actually some of the best, that, as I mentioned, politicians were not having the back of our law enforcement officers. So, of course, we have to scrutinize them. They have to be understood. They have to have checks and balances. They're human at the end of the day. But at the same time, too, all of our law enforcement officers have to know that they're going to have people within government that have their backs, that provide them the tools and the resources they need to do their jobs so that we can have a safe and fruitful future. Another detail, just in small detail, I'll make note of. I'm not in favor of massive amounts of security and flock cameras. I think, though, that's a slippery slope to more of an authoritarian world. I just wanted to make a small note of that. But largely, it's just
Indeed.
supporting the people and looking in the best interest of everybody.
So this podcast actually started as a local podcast in a city called Huber Heights.
Mhm.
And I focused on local government. So a lot of people may have never heard of this podcast. That's right there at the 70-75 corridor, and they ran a lot of task force to combat human trafficking. That's a big subject.
Yeah.
And I would love to hear your ideas on how to combat human trafficking in Ohio. So yeah.
Well, yes. I'm glad you brought that up. I've made note of this. This is something that's been very clear to me. We have so many incredible veterans out there, many people with very specialized skills that are not being put to use. So, upon becoming governor, I want to deputize, put together a special task force specifically for targeting and tracking down human and child traffickers. Ohio is at the crossroads of America. I-75 from Michigan all the way down to Florida, and I-80-90 that runs east and west. We have rail, we have air, we have sea. And while it may get swept under the rug, there's a tremendous amount of that here. Some other details I hear with regard to sex trafficking and child trafficking. One of the places where you can find them readily is at Planned Parenthood. So there are some levels of evil to Planned Parenthood beyond just the normal level. But our veterans have the ability to specifically target and find these people. And specifically, I want Ohio to be the most dangerous place on earth to be a human or child trafficker.
Excellent. Any thoughts on that, Miss Georgeton? Sorry.
Yeah, no, I would just probably add something we talked about a little bit earlier on was the fact that we are the Christian ticket here for governor and lieutenant governor. And one of the things that I think all of these things that we're talking about are connected, related to sort of the breakdown of where a culture gets sort of their values from. And at the top, it starts with religion. And then from there, from religion, culture is built. And then from culture is where the policy is built. And then after policies, that's what we're seeing downhill with the people, and sort of the degradation of where we are in society today is related to that loss of that top ladder of religion. We took prayer out of schools in the 70s, and that appears to not have been a good move for us. So I would personally, we talked about schools, we're talking about safety. All of these things are connected because they are cultural values that have just rolled downhill because we haven't taken those values and morals seriously. And I think that's a topic that should be brought back front and center, as well as in schools teaching. We mentioned shop and home economics and how to balance your checkbook, those things that children used to learn. Also, writing in cursive in school. These are things that are done commonly in classical academies, and we're seeing children graduate at high levels when they go to classical academies. But again, it's also related to public safety, because when children have the proper upbringing, then they're not out there kind of running around in the streets doing bad things. So I just kind of wanted to point out that these things are tied together, and what we're seeing with the attack on sort of religion in our society today is a primary problem, and we're seeing the results of that.
Thank you. One of the things I saw on your website, Mr. Putsch, is to deal. I don't know if it was specifically on prison reform or things in that realm. I know we have at least 3 private prisons. I'm kind of against the private prison system. I don't want to put that on you guys, but what are your ideas on prison reform and corrections in general that we have in Ohio?
That it's a large topic. We might want to do another whole show just on that. If I may, more overarching, you see in that section relating to law, and of course prison reform, even the caseload you'd see of public defendants, things like lawfare. There's a lot of details in our society that we kind of look past. We know things are unfair. The privatizing of prisons, what that does. Does it take the humanity out of it? Does it turn it into simply an industry that's highly profitable? You do not want to have a society, a state, or a country where people lose their faith in law. They lose their faith in the system, the correctional system. Lawfare. I hate the thought that any wealthy centimillionaire or billionaire can basically just lawfare anybody into oblivion and out financially horsepower them in the legal system. I think that's wrong. I think that's not the hallmark of a good society at all. That's something that I absolutely want to combat. I think it's also terrible that, like we said, public defendants for people that maybe can't afford their own lawyer, because in the United States, we can appoint you defense. But we all well realize that they have such caseload and such difficulty that I hate to say you get what you pay for, but you get what you pay for. But is that fair? I don't like that either. We need to revamp. We need to review. We need to make some changes there so it's fair for everybody, regardless of how much you're worth. Obviously, the task force relating to human and child trafficking ties in there too. But
Right.
The prison system, frankly, would warrant another video on it at length. But to give you an example, the other thing that's terribly frightening, and maybe more so frightening than prisons that have everybody in them, is radicalized judges that by pattern are letting career criminals back on the street. Obviously we were all horrifically shocked by Irina Zarutska. Ohio doesn't need that. Nobody needs that. So detecting the pattern and seeing what's going on there so that we don't have judges that are just letting horrible criminals back out, and we're having double standards in law and breaking down our society with judges that effectively get put into positions with outside interests, perhaps even Soros money making things. We hear about that out there. These are just things that break down society, break down law, break down the public's trust in law, myself included. Like, there are many things that scare me about that, and I'm a general nice upstanding person trying to make people's lives better. So across the board, we have to bring it back, and I'm excited about this position and the difficult task ahead to do it. Kim, do you have thoughts you want to add?
My only thoughts are with regard to helping prisoners when they, exit the system, making sure that we have educational policies in place for them, that they have work, that they can have gainful work after they get out of the system and be reintroduced back into society. So I think that would be really important.
Very good point. Thank you.
Amen. So as governor, you would have the opportunity for pardons and clemency and things like that. Have you thought about how you would go about looking into pardons or clemency or anything like that for prisoners?
Not at great length right now.
Sure.
My first priorities are absolutely crushing things like waste, fraud, and abuse, making sure we don't let more criminals just on the street readily through mess up court systems, radicalized judges, things like that. Make sure that law is fair. So one, frankly, I appreciate you bringing that up. I'll be looking at that more carefully. I think we've all in America seen at one time in a life or another, people being pardoned, that we think there's more to it than just objectively what's in the best interest of the future, in the consideration of law in that matter. And those are things that I never want people to lose trust in our system with. So frankly, I appreciate you bringing that up. I'm going to be giving more thought into that.
Perfect. We saw a Speaker of the House in Ohio get convicted and go to prison dealing with the energy sector. What are some thoughts on how you would handle an energy plan and things like lots of folks? I know there's many Ohioans watching tonight and probably watching later. Their bills are going through the roof. Do you have any ideas on that?
Well, the biggest thing is, why are they going through the roof?
Right.
And the biggest looming factor that we have right now that's frightening are the data centers. It appears to me the reason why so many data centers are coming to Ohio was a lack of foresight nationally. I know this is just one thing, and there are other reasons for the numbers going up, but I want to bring this up. The data centers right now, AI, we're in an international arms race, a new one that in some ways parallels nuclear arms proliferation. But Ohio already had pretty good energy creation for the density of the population and such, and it's a good position to put the data centers. So they're kind of being slipped in under the cover of the night. But the problem with it being is, if the companies that are putting them in and investing in it, they're not building new power generation. We're not building new stations, nuclear power plants, maybe coal burning, whatever the case may be for energy dense grid. The people end up subsidizing the cost through massive rates, through skyrocketing bills. How is that remotely fair? How does that remotely help the future? How does that help anybody build or grow or build another business? So in a sense, the first thing on energy to help everybody is stop letting us be sold out. If big companies and massive global investors want to come in and make something happen, well, it needs to be a net gain for the state and the people. So if they want to do that, they need to be investing in building power plants as well. So for me, in looking at it, the 50,000 foot level, everything happening needs to be a net gain. And we need to be building both long-term investments as well as some shorter-term measures to get the bills down so people can live decently. But also, as time goes by, it gets just better and better and better, and the bills keep going down, because there's no reason, if we have the right leadership that frankly has the spine to stand up against billionaires and tech and industry that wants to leverage us and take advantage. As long as we have the leadership with the spine and the foresight to keep pushing for that, we're going to be able to turn the tide on energy and energy bills. And that's good for everybody, individuals, private homes, and building businesses. So that's where I see it. Kim, do you have comments you'd like to make on the fraud and people going to jail at the moment right now?
Well, I think one of the issues with the energy sector is the initiative to replace all of our old energy meters with smart meters. And those are all being swapped out in sequential order. I'm not sure if everyone in the state of Ohio has smart meters now, but I know that's definitely something that was part of whatever agreements were made. And those are being done obviously at a cost, and we are the people who are ending up paying for it. And we actually don't even want the smart meters in general. So why do they want smart meters? So they can actually track at a very individualized level how much energy you're using. And it does relate back to the data centers, because at some point those data centers will be able to tie all of that data back to your usage, in addition to the whole profile that they're going to be creating with your particular usage of not only energy, but your browser searches, your emails, your texts, your purchases, every single data, everything that you search online. So everything will be gathered, including your energy usage, and will create a profile for you within the data center. So I don't like the fact that energy companies can continue to add on service fees and additional taxes to the bills that are creating these high experiences for people, and it needs to stop.
Thank you. Okay, so let's pretend for a minute. We're going to fast forward to May 6th. It's after the primary. Or no. Let's fast forward to, you've won the primary, you've won the election. How would you work with the legislature?
Oh, forgive me. Like when we make it all the way in office?
Yeah, you're in office. You're at the head of the table now. So how do you work with the legislature?
Well, a lot of that initially is not being entirely contentious and building relationships along the way, which is easier said than done in politics and positioning it. But the key is, and I'm reminded of this every day when I speak to various organizations that represent everything from parental rights to guns and sportsman rights, the right to repair industry, etc., because they always want to know where you stand on everything. So in terms of working with the legislator, the first and foremost thing that's absolutely imperative for anybody holding office, especially a high office, is knowing specifically where your values stand, period, and what you stand for, and being a representative of the people, so that you don't easily sway and bend, so that you have consistency. And that's just the most important thing. Demanding that any bills and measures are being looked at in detail, the ripple effects considered of them, because there's so many things, we know this. There's so many bills and measures that go through that seem great on the superficial. Maybe they have some fancy name and whatnot. And at the superficial level, it looks like it's going to be good for the people. But the next thing you know, it's taking away rights from parents, giving it to the court system for kids, for anything. So I bring that up because I am more than task saturated with the entirety coming my way. And Kim's fantastic, I'm sure, can do this as well. But we look at our rights, things that went away with the measures during COVID. And I can promise you, I think we all would have preferred, at the time during that, we had leadership that shared the values of Kim and myself more, that we would have done better to hold back against legislators and outside interests trying to push bills and such that are outside the values and the best interest of the people. So the short answer is simply steadfast standing for your values and the things that the people voted for to begin with.
Excellent. How would you're as the governor, you're in charge of the Office of Budget and Management. How would you manage spending in the executive agencies for Office of Budget and Management and things like that?
Well, it's a good thing that we had a family business growing up, and I like to do a lot with a little, which is a nice way of saying sometimes with cars and things I'm cheap. I'm not. You have to be very fiscally responsible. With regard to leading the nonprofit, obviously, I know how hard it is to earn a dollar if you're working. I know how hard it is to have a dollar donated in a nonprofit. And they say a fool and their money is easily parted. Well, we're no fool. every dollar, every tens of thousands, hundreds, millions, billions of dollars that come through, all I see is the hard work of all the people of Ohio, period. And frankly, when I see waste and fraud and abuse, I'll be honest, I take it personally as a working class person. We see billionaires running for office and buying their way in. These are people that are in a position, for instance, my competition, whose net worth has raised over $800 million just running for office. Yet I've busted knuckles like everybody else. So with regard to fiscal responsibility, this may sound like a simple thing to say, but I literally feel the pain of every man, woman, child working out there for a dollar. And it's my responsibility to make sure that silly people, and I'm being nice, in suits don't waste it. Or worse yet, there are ways that toxically steal it. Because when I think of the Somali fraud going on in Minnesota, which certainly is going to be reflected here, could be the tunes of billions of dollars. That was billions of dollars that belong to the people that they worked hard for. They will no longer provide a better tomorrow. So I know that's a simple way to put it, but the simplest answer is I know how hard it is to earn a dollar, and
Right.
we're not going to waste any more.
So I see a lot of momentum in your guys' campaign throughout social media and just talking with neighbors and things. They hear about you now. It takes money to win elections, but it also takes, meeting with folks. Like you guys have a bunch of events planned. You're going to be traveling the state. How would you handle the general election if you get past Vivek and the other field? How would you handle the general election against Amy Acton and her running mate? How would you guys handle that?
Should I go just a small one first? I think you're going to have some great things to say too.
Yeah, go ahead.
There's maybe some people that love the battle between left and right may not love this answer as much. But the fact of the matter is I look forward to the general, because now we're not just speaking with Republicans and such and finding us as the candidate to go into the general, but we're talking to all the people. And the reason I say I'm looking forward to that is because the number one thing or number one rule with me and Kim as well, we specifically care what's in the best interest of the people first and foremost. For instance, the last 11 years I spent volunteering time mentoring the best young men and women of all kinds of different backgrounds and teaching with Genius Garage. And that's something that resonates with people. The Omega car that I built, I got to speak about on Tucker Carlson's show early last year, even before I was doing anything relating to office. That's a car that gets over 100 miles per gallon on diesel. It's just as fast 0 to 60 as a Tesla Model 3 and has a lower carbon footprint per mile than an EV when you consider national average of charging versus the carbon footprint of diesel. And I just bring that up because raising money, raising the support of the people really comes from what they see in their candidates. And both with Kim and myself, the people, and to what you just mentioned, the reason the tides have shifted so quickly and there's such an incredible buzz, which I hate to use the word grassroots. I mean, it is, but that almost doesn't give credit for what's happened. This is a movement happening because all we are is our people standing up with and for everybody, which at the end of the day is exactly what our government is supposed to be. It's supposed to be for the people and by the people. And Kim and I represent that. We represent everybody. And that's why the support is coming. The money is coming in. You guys are going to be very surprised and happy with some endorsements coming up. And I'm looking forward to the general. Kim, I'm sorry, I got a little long-winded, but please add to that.
No, you're great. It was good. I mean, I just don't think that, I think that once we win the primary, all Republicans are going to be rallying behind us, and there won't be any challenge with beating her in the general election because, quite frankly, the people just don't have trust in her. So I think it will be easy to win.
Yeah, she's a quitter. Sorry, but the Democrat, she quit as health director, I think. And I go, gosh, not only do I not want a person that quits at the helm of the great ship of Ohio, certainly not going to put her in charge of a fleet of F-16s. Forgive me, car guy talk here, I guess.
So we're about out of time. I wanted to ask you guys, there's some folks in the comments that had some questions. Would you mind if I just popped up a couple of them? And
of course.
All right. So let's start with Frank Wiley. He said, do they have support and backing in the current system to get the safety and value plans implemented?
I'm not certain what he's referring to. Kim, do you have a note on that?
I'm not sure if he's talking about like within the legislature. Is that what his question is referencing?
Yeah, I believe so. Yes.
Do we have the backing within the legislature? I mean, we will once we're elected. The legislature will follow along. We will run it like a business, and we will create our mission for Ohio, our vision, and we will roll out a budget that that will be a goal for the state legislature to hit. And that's what we'll go with. And I think we will collaborate with them. And yes, I don't see why they wouldn't be behind us.
There was one right. Somebody on X named No Name asked if you would be willing to debate Vivek Ramaswamy.
Of course. Actually, there's some talk about that. I would welcome it. I don't know if he would. I'd almost guess no. But I'd certainly welcome it, and that is at the core of what our governmental system is, an election system, and the people want to know what they're getting into. But at the same time, too, Kim and I are going to present everything about who we are, what we represent, and certainly our competition, shall we say, has been out there talking for a real long time. So I think the people are going to have a pretty good feel for who they want to vote for, but we'd of course welcome it.
Excellent. My last question for tonight is, I did watch that Tucker interview with you on there. I am a subscriber to the TCN network. I love Tucker Carlson. There was one thing mentioned that he asked you to build him a car. Are you building Tucker a car?
I'm a little busy right now, but yeah, he was serious. I'd be happy to build him one. Of course, that requires actually having a car company or startup place to do it. And that is at the root of a lot of the reason why I chose to run, because I didn't see it. To me, Ohio is an incredible state and resource of the people. But in a matter of speaking, it's kind of like having a garage with a fully stocked toolbox, every kind of piece of equipment that you want, and mechanics that can work, and no projects.
Right.
So why is it there's no support for new innovation, new startup companies, new industry, and new inventions? Like the watch I'm wearing right here, I prototyped. This meets all the NASA requirements for astronaut watches. And we have the Artemis missions coming up to go around the moon and land a man on the moon. And with tariffs, the whole point of that was to incentivize, or at least kind of force bring manufacturing back to America. But I don't see any support. So I want to make sure there's support in Ohio to do things like that. For instance, build a startup car company, to experiment with material science for good direction, to build new designs, to build a watch company, because these are great businesses and industries that places like Toledo, Cleveland, Dayton, Cincinnati, they would all love to have. So guess what? How about Kim and I go fix the government for full terms? And then afterward, when Ohio's in a much better position to make things happen, I'll go back to the private sector like the founding fathers always imagined, and we'll build a car company right here in Ohio. How about that?
All right. Thanks, guys, for coming on tonight. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you guys want to tell the people watching now or watching later?
Ladies first.
Put May 5th on your calendar. We're going to need everybody to get out the vote on May 5th and vote for Casey Putsch.
All right.
I appreciate that. And the other thing is, go to the website, putschforohio.com. Of course, you can look it up, see the policies and all that. But we're in this together. We have incredible volunteers. You can reach out. Frankly, we're so shocked and surprised and happy. It feels good, the amount of support. But donating does matter very much. We literally are in this together. All of it goes specifically to the campaign, specifically to connecting everybody. There's a whole team of incredible people working with us. And just like the Air Force Thunderbirds and the Blue Angels, we may just see maybe a half a dozen pilots and aircraft, But for those aircraft flying around, you've got well over 100 people of a team working behind it. And Kim and I have an incredible team, and that's why we're being successful. So please consider going to the website and contributing to the campaign as well.
Thanks, guys, for joining me tonight. And thanks for everybody watching. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.